The Grumman F8F Bearcat was one of the most remarkable piston-engine fighters ever built. Designed in the final stages of World War II, it was intended to replace the rugged F6F Hellcat as the U.S. Navy's premier carrier-based fighter. However, by the time it entered service in mid-1945, the war was nearly over. The Beck had barely saw action before jet. Powered aircraft rendered piston fighters obsolete. But what if history had taken a slightly different course? What if the Bearcat had been ready and deployed in 1944, just as the Pacific War reached its climax? Such a change could have influenced naval air warfare, accelerated Allied victories, and altered post-war aviation development. This what-if scenario offers a fascinating glimpse into how one of America's finest fighters might have changed the air war against Japan, and perhaps even the evolution of carrier aviation itself. In reality, the F8F Bearcat made its first flight in August 1944 and entered limited service by May 1945, only few months before Japan's surrender. Production delays, shifting design and performance priorities, and the arrival of jets like the P-80 Shooting Star kept the Bearcat from seeing combat. Yet the aircraft's performance was stunning. It could outclimb and outturn almost every Allied and Axis piston fighter. Weighing less than the Hellcat, but powered by the same 2001, 100-horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2008-100 engine, it had an incredible power-to-weight ratio. Its design philosophy was simple: maximum climb rate and acceleration for interception missions. Had it been introduced a year earlier, it would have replaced the Hellcat and Corsair in frontline squadrons, just as U.S. forces began their island-hopping campaign toward Japan. The skies over the Philippines, Uima, and Okinawa might have looked very different with Bearcats leading the charge. By 1944, the U.S. Navy already held a clear advantage in the Pacific. The Hellcat dominated Japanese air forces, achieving a kill ratio of nearly 191. However, the Japanese still fielded dangerous opponents like the Mitsubishi A6M50 and the newer Kawanishi N1K2J, Shiden Kai, both of which could outperform the Hellcat at lower speeds. The introduction of the F8F Bearcat in this period could have turned that slight challenge into total dominance. Its blistering climb rate and agility would have made it nearly untouchable in dogfights. More importantly, the Bearcat's shorter takeoff distance meant smaller escort carriers could operate them effectively. This would have allowed the U.S. Navy to deploy more high-performance fighters across the Pacific, providing superior cover for amphibious invasions and carrier raids. Essentially, the Bearcat would have made American air superiority absolute a year earlier than it historically became. The Bearcat represented the peak of piston-engine fighter design. Joremann's engineers focused on minimizing weight while maximizing performance. They shaved off every unnecessary pound from the Hellcat's airframe, reduced the wingspan for carrier operations, and gave it a new bubble canopy for superb visibility. The result was a fighter that could reach over 450 m and climb 5019, 144 alternate history feet per minute, unheard of for a carrier-based aircraft. If introduced in 1944, the Bearcat would have given U.S. naval aviators a true edge over their adversaries. Its ability to intercept kamikazes or enemy bombers within minutes of detection could have saved countless ships in the final months of the war. Furthermore, its performance might have even rivaled the best land-based fighters, blurring the line between naval and air force superiority. In short, Grumman had created the ultimate naval dogfighter just too late. Imagine the Bearcat debuting during the 1944 Battle of the Philippines. See the so-called Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. In that massive air engagement, USS Hellcats decimated Japanese carrier aircraft, shooting down hundreds with minimal losses. Now replace those Hellcats with Bearcats. The kill ratio, already staggering, might have been even more one-sided. With its faster climb and superior roll rate, the Bearcat would have intercepted Japanese raids earlier before they reached you. S-Fleet's escort carriers supporting the Philippines invasion could have operated Bearcats as well, thanks to their lightweight and short takeoff distance. This means more fighters per carrier and faster response to enemy air threats. The psychological impact on Japanese pilots already demoralized by mounting losses would have been devastating. In this alternate history, the Pacific skies of late 1944 would have been an absolute slaughterhouse for Japanese aviation. By late 1944, Japan had shifted to desperate tactics. The kamikaze campaign, suicide pilots, flying obsolete aircraft, inflicted significant damage on U.S. fleets at Leyte Gulf and Okinawa. The F6F Hellcat and F4 User performed admirably, but even they struggled to intercept low-flying attackers in time. If the F8F Bearcat had entered service, then it could have changed this dynamic dramatically. Its phenomenal climb rate and blistering acceleration would have allowed carrier groups to scramble interceptors faster than ever before. A kamikaze detected on radar could have been met by a Bearcat within minutes. The Bear's agility at low altitude also made it ideal for last-second interceptions. In this alternate 1944, fewer destroyers and carriers might have been lost to suicide attacks, preserving precious tonnage for later campaigns. Strategically, this would have allowed the Bearcat vs Japanese fighters Admiral Nimitz's forces to press closer to Japan sooner and with less attrition. The Bearcat, built for interception, was exactly the aircraft needed to counter the final phase of Japan's aerial resistance. The Battle of Okinawa in 1945 was one of the bloodiest and most complex operations of the Pacific War. Over 900 kamikaze attacks struck the U.S. fleet, sinking or damaging dozens of ships. If the Bearcat had entered service a year earlier, by spring 1945, it would have been the primary Navy fighter defending these fleets. Its speed and climb would have made it nearly perfect for defensive combat air patrols caps. Bearcats could have scrambled from carriers or nearby bases and intercepted suicide planes at higher altitudes before they dived on the ships. Even a small increase in interception success would have saved lives and vessels. Moreover, its short takeoff distance would have allowed smaller escort carriers to operate closer to the front lines, providing tighter air cover for landing forces. The reduced attrition of ships and planes might have shortened the Okinawa campaign by weeks, saving thousands of sailors and Marines. Thus, the Bearcat's earlier debut could have transformed one of the Pacific's costliest battles into a more decisive and less devastating Allied victory. While kamikazes dominated headlines, Japan still fielded capable interceptors like the Kawanishi N1K2J Shiden Kai, often flown by veteran pilots. The Shiden Kai was fast, well-armed, and agile, a match for the Hellcat and Corsair under skilled hands. The F8F Bearcat, however, would have outclassed it completely. In climb rate, acceleration, and roll performance, the Bearcat was superior. Its lighter frame and powerful R2 108-100 engine gave it the edge in vertical combat, while its new bubble canopy provided unmatched visibility, a critical advantage in dogfights. Japanese pilots already struggling with fuel shortages and inexperienced training would have faced an enemy aircraft that outperformed them in every way. The result would have been total aerial legacy and what could have been supremacy for the U Navy by early 1945. Even the introduction of advanced Japanese prototypes like the Mitsubishi J2M Raiden or the Kai 84H8 would not have shifted the balance. The Bearcat represented the peak of piston-engine technology, an aircraft whose performance left no room for Japanese countermeasures. One of the Bearcat's overlooked advantages was how it changed carrier operations. Designed with small carriers in mind, it had folding wings, a short takeoff roll, and lightweight for easy deck handling. If deployed in 1944, it would have allowed U.S. naval planners to assign high-performance fighters even to light and escort carriers. This flexibility could have multiplied American air coverage across the Pacific. Amphibious task forces could have received dedicated Bearcat squadrons for protection and ground attack, freeing up larger carriers for offensive strikes. Its simplicity and reliability also meant faster maintenance turnarounds, keeping more aircraft combat ready. In this alternate timeline, the USS Navy's overall sortie rate, the number of missions flown per day might have increased by 10–20%, compounding America's overwhelming industrial advantage. The Bearcat's presence would have been a logistical and tactical gift, enabling the U to conduct simultaneous operations across wider areas of the Pacific. It wasn't just a better plane, it was a better system for war fighting at sea. By mid-1945, Japan's air defenses were collapsing. The few surviving fighter units faced relentless bombing from B-29s and carrier raids. If the Bearcat had entered combat in 1944, this collapse might have come months earlier. Its ability to intercept conclusion Japanese fighters and bombers with unmatched speed would have crippled Japan's remaining airfields and industrial centers sooner. Bearcats escorting carrier strike groups could have annihilated Japanese interceptors defending cities like Tokyo or Nagoya. This would have opened the way for B-29s to operate with even less opposition, devastating Japan's infrastructure before the atomic bombs were ever considered. Additionally, the Bearcat's efficiency might have allowed carriers to strike deeper targets without relying as heavily on land-based support. In short, Japan's already desperate air defense would have become futile far earlier. The war in the Pacific might not have lasted until August 1945. It might have ended by early summer with Japan facing air annihilation months before Hiroshima. Although primarily designed for naval warfare, the Bearcat could have made an impression in the European skies as well. If introduced in 1944, its performance would have rivaled or even surpassed that of land-based fighters like the P-51, Mustang, and Spitfire Mk Roman 14. The Bearcat's exceptional climb rate and short takeoff distance would have allowed it to operate from rough forward airstrips, making it an ideal escort for tactical bombers in France or Germany against Luftwaffe opponents such as the FW-90D and Bf-9K. The Bearcat's agility and acceleration would have given Allied pilots the upper hand in this alternate history. The U.S. Navy might have shared its advanced aircraft design with the U.S. Army Air Forces, potentially influencing European operations in 1945. Bearcat squadrons flying from Mediterranean bases or temporary airfields in France could have contributed to the final push into Germany, achieving air superiority more quickly and reducing Allied bomber losses in the last months of the European campaign. The North American P-51 Mustang was often hailed as the ultimate propeller-driven fighter of World War II. But if the Bearcat had entered service in 1944, that title might have been challenged. In pure performance, the Bearcat could outclimb and out-accelerate the Mustang, though it lacked the Mustang's long range. On carriers and Pacific Islands, range mattered less. What counted was interception speed and agility. Had both aircraft served simultaneously, they might have represented the pinnacle of Allied air power in different domains, the Mustang ruling the skies of Europe and the Bearcat dominating the Pacific. The rivalry could also have spurred further design innovation, pushing both German and North American aviation to explore lightweight high-power designs leading directly into early jet prototypes. In this alternate world, aviation historians might have debated for decades not between the Hellcat and the Mustang, but between the Bearcat and Mustang, two American masterpieces that defined the ultimate expression of piston-powered flight. By late 1944, jet technology was emerging with Germany's Me-2-162 and Britain's Gloucester Meteor signaling a new era. Could the F8F Bearcat have competed with these early jets? Surprisingly, yes, at least in certain conditions. The Me-2-162 was faster in level flight, but it had sluggish acceleration and poor turning ability. The Bearcat, on the other hand, could outclimb and outturn the German jet in a dogfight, particularly below 20,000 feet. Its immediate throttle response gave it an advantage in tight engagements where the Me-2-162's engines lagged. If Bearcats had encountered German jets in 1944-45, American pilots might have developed tactics to exploit that agility advantage much as they later did against my G-15s in Korea. In short bursts of combat, the Bearcat could have surprised jet pilots and scored victories through maneuverability and superior pilot training. Thus, even on the edge of the jet age, this piston-powered fighter could have remained a deadly force to be reckoned with. If the Bearcat had entered mass production in 1944 and played a major role in late-war battles, it would have reshaped post-war aviation strategy. The U.S. Navy might have delayed the transition to jets, believing advanced piston fighters still offered sufficient performance. Funding for early naval jets like the FJ Fury or FH Phantom could have been reduced or redirected, slowing the Navy's entry into the jet era. Conversely, the Bearcat's success might also have inspired hybrid designs, lightweight fighters with jet boosters or turboprop engines. In either case, the technological bridge between propeller and jet power would have looked different. The Bearcat's dominance might have extended well into the late 1940s, altering naval procurement priorities and influencing the design philosophy behind early Cold War aircraft. Instead of immediately chasing jet speed, designers might have sought to perfect agility, climb, and power-to-weight ratios qualities the Bearcat exemplified. Beyond its physical performance, the Bearcat's psychological impact would have been immense. In 1944, American pilots were already confident, but the introduction of a fighter so superior to anything the enemy possessed would have elevated morale to new heights. Conversely, Japanese and German pilots would have faced yet another leap in Allied technological advantage, further eroding their will to fight. Strategic planners might have felt emboldened to launch riskier operations earlier, perhaps accelerating assaults on Formosa, Okinawa, or even planning for a pre-surrender invasion of Japan. Air superiority wasn't just a tactical factor. It shaped national morale and operational daring. With the Bearcats sweeping the skies, the Allies could have acted more decisively and with greater confidence. In this sense, the Bearcat's hypothetical 1944 arrival might have hastened the psychological collapse of the Axis powers, demonstrating that the Allies' industrial and technological edge had become utterly insurmountable. The Bearcat's early deployment could also have changed U.S. naval doctrine. Before its arrival, naval aviation was still adapting to the lessons of larger-scale carrier warfare. The Bearcat's lightweight, short takeoff, and high climb performance would have encouraged doctrines emphasizing rapid response interception and decentralized air defense. Fleet commanders might have relied less on heavy carrier groups and more on dispersed light carriers operating agile Bearcat squadrons. This shift toward flexibility and responsiveness could have laid the groundwork for Cold War naval air strategy. Small groups of carriers operating independently across vast oceans. In essence, the Bearcat might have pioneered the very concepts that later became standard during the 1950s and 1960s. A fighter capable of both defending fleets and striking offensively from small decks would have redefined the Navy's understanding of sea control and air mobility long before the jet age began. Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation earned fame for rugged warplanes like the Wildcat, Hellcat, and Avenger. But if the Bearcat had entered combat in 1944, it would have cemented Grumman's reputation as the undisputed master of naval aviation innovation. The company's engineers, led by Ironworks founder Leroy Grumman, had already proven their ability to build durable high-performance fighters. The Bearcat, however, represented a leap into near-perfect design. Its earlier success might have elevated Jarman's influence over post-war Navy procurement, giving it a head start over competitors like VA or McDonnell. This could have meant earlier development of legendary follow-ups like the F9F Panther or even the F-14 decades later. In short, the Bearcat's earlier impact might have set Grumman's technological dominance in stone, shaping not just the end of World War II, but the entire evolution of U.S. naval aviation thereafter. The Bearcat's what-if scenario also offers lessons about fighter evolution. It shows that technological timing is as critical as innovation itself. The Bearcat was by most measures the pinnacle of piston, and in performance, yet it arrived just as jets rendered such perfection obsolete. Had it appeared a year earlier, its operational legacy would have been legendary, not footnoted. This teaches an enduring lesson in military technology. Even the best design can be overshadowed if it misses its strategic window. Future designers learned from this speed of innovation, and deployment became just as vital as the design itself. The U.S. military later applied this principle during the Cold War, rushing advanced fighters like the F-86 and F-1 into service to maintain technological superiority. In that sense, the Bearcat story became a cautionary tale about timing brilliance that came a heartbeat too late. If the Bearcat had arrived in 1944, the Pacific War might have ended months earlier. With Bearcats decimating Japan's remaining air forces, intercepting kamikazes more effectively, and allowing safer carrier operations, the U.S. could have tightened the noose around Japan faster. Strategic bombers would have faced less resistance, and invasion preparations might have advanced sooner. Japan's leadership, already desperate by mid-1945, might have viewed continued resistance as even more hopeless in the face of total air annihilation. In this alternate timeline, Japan could have surrendered before the atomic bombings, sparing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Bearcat's speed and efficiency, multiplied by American industrial power, might have become the final push that ended the war through overwhelming air dominance alone. Thus, a few months in production timing could have changed not only military history, but the moral and geopolitical legacy of the war's closing act. The F8F Bearcat remains one of aviation's great what-ifs. Designed as the ultimate piston-engine fighter, it embodied the peak of propeller technology, unmatched speed, climb, and agility in a compact frame. But history's timing denied it glory. Had it entered service in 1944, it might have revolutionized the Pacific Air War, saved thousands of lives, reshaped naval doctrine, and altered the trajectory of post-war aviation. The Bearcat's absence from World War II combat serves as a reminder that even the most extraordinary machines depend on timing, logistics, and circumstance. It stands as a testament to engineering brilliance, a masterpiece that arrived just as the curtain fell on its era. In another version of history, the F8F Bearcat might have been remembered alongside the Spitfire, Mustang, and Zero as one of the true icons of aerial